folks, we have cut our legs and we've put all of the mortises in our legs, and we're getting ready to go ahead and take the stock we've cut up for our short rails and put tenons on them. Now tenons are little nubs that we're going to cut on the end of our rails that are going to fit inside of the mortises we cut on our leg, and that's how these two pieces are going to be joined. So what we're going to do to cut these tenons is use one of the other table saws that we have in the shop, and we're going to use what's called a stack head dado set. A stack head dado set is just a series of blades, okay, two full-size blades like this, and then a series of what are called chippers, which are just two-toothed blades like you see here. What we can do with these stack head dado cutters is create a sandwich of chippers and full-size blades to cut a groove or a tenon, okay, of a specific width. So you can see I can put these together, sandwich them up, and stick them on the table saw. I can add or subtract as many chippers as I want to get the stack to a specific dimension. I'll consult the plans to figure out what that dimension needs to be. When I cut the tenons, we're going to do the same thing when it's time to cut the grooves in the rails as well. So we're going to use the stack head dado cutter. This is going to allow us to cut this all in one pass, and we're not going to have to make 100 little passes here. But we have to make sure that we set this up correctly. Anytime you set up a stack head dado cutter and you have more than two blades, you need to make sure you are always sandwiching with two full-size blades. You can never set up with a chipper on the outside, okay, that'll throw the arbor and the motor off balance. So we always want to make sure we create a sandwich, okay, of chippers between two full-size blades. Okay, and again, you can use any combination you want to get to any dimension that you want, depending upon the operation that you're about to undertake. We have consulted the plans and determined that we are going to put a 1/2-inch tenon on the end of our rails. So what I've done is I have taken two of the full-size blades and two chippers, and I've sandwiched them together and put them on the arbor of the table saw. Okay, that gives me a width of a 1/2 inch, which is exactly what we want on the tenons here. So I'm going to go ahead and put the throat plate back on. And now I need to set my height. And according to the plans, the height of my saw blade needs to be 3/16. Now I need that 3/16 to be at the very top of the cut. So I'm going to roll this around so that a tooth is all the way up in the 12 o'clock position. And I am simply going to take a ruler and measure for 3/16. Okay, that's got to come down just a little bit here. Okay, and that looks like it's pretty darn close. Well, I'm a little bit less than 3/16, which is what I want, because I want to sneak up on this cut. I don't want my tenons to fit really loose inside of the mortise, so I want to sneak up and take little bits off, getting that exactly precise. The last thing I need to set here is my fence. The fence is going to help make sure that we do not cut more of the board than we want. If we look here at a cut tenon already, I want to make sure I stop my cut so that I only cut the last 1/2 inch of this board here. If I don't move the fence, I can accidentally maybe set this in a wrong position. So what I'm going to do is set the fence so that it is a 1/2 inch away from the outside of my saw blade here. So right about there. So now my fence is set, so what I can do is take the rails that I'm going to cut, place them against the fence, bring my miter gauge in, which is what we're going to need to do to control the board as we pass it through here. And I know that if I put the board against the fence, I'm going to cut a 1/2 inch off. I've already set my height to that 3/16, so what I'm going to do for this first set of cuts for creating our tenons is I'm going to cut with the faces of the board down. So I'm going to cut, I'm going to flip the board over, and I'm going to cut. and then I'm going to check against the mortise to make sure that it fits snugly. If it doesn't, I will raise the blade a little bit and continue to take little nibbles until that fits perfectly. Once I know the thickness of my tenon is good, I'm going to cut all 4 of my rails this way. Once I have the faces cut, we'll readjust the height of the saw blade to go ahead and cut the shoulders of our tenons to get them to the correct width based on the plans. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cut a test cut real quick. A couple things about cutting here. There's a lot of saw, okay, so we want to make sure we hold nice and tight. My left hand is going to pinch the board against the miter gauge, okay, and push down firmly. And I want to make sure I'm pushing down near where the cut is going to happen. It doesn't do me any good to push down here because the saw blade is just going to lift this up. So push down close to the cut. Your right hand goes on the handle and guides everything through. Okay, so your left hand is just holding everything in place. Your right hand is the one that moves the board through the cut. So this is going to be my test cut. I'm going to cut it and I'm going to check it against the mortise and make any adjustments I need to, and then cut all the rest of my tenons. That is a little sloppy, so I'm going to lower the blade just a teeny bit so I don't cut quite as much. So just a little bit there. And I'm going to cut the other side real quick. Is just right. Okay, it sticks in there, it holds itself in place. Okay, if I put the other side in, you can see it's loose. Okay, it takes just a little bit of pressure to get that in there. That is what we're shooting for. So now that I know this setup is good, I'm going to cut the rest of my rails on their faces. So I've cut all of my rails so that I have tenons on all the ends. My next step is to take and cut the shoulder cut of the tenon and cut the corners out so that the width of the tenon matches the length of my mortise. You can see right now they're too long, so now I need to reset the saw blade height. I'm not going to adjust the fence. I'm going to raise the blade so that I can figure out what I need to cut off the corners to make that fit nicely into my mortise. Alright, I've raised the saw blade now to the desired height to go ahead and cut the corners of my rail here. I'm going to make a test cut again. I'm going to check it against an existing mortise that I know is good, and I'll make adjustments to the blade height till I get it dialed in. Once I have it setting, I will cut all 4 or the remainder of my rails as well. So now I'm going to put the board on edge, still going to go tight against the fence, still going to go against my miter gauge. Again, left hand pinches and pushes down, right hand pushes the board through. We'll check here, that's pretty good. It probably could be a little bit looser, so I'm going to actually raise the blade just the teeniest little bit. Take a little more off here, and that should be good. Okay, that's exactly what we're looking for. Okay, a little bit of tapping and that'll go right in. Okay, a little bit more maybe cleaning on the mortise will make it perfect. Okay, but that is what we're looking for these short rails. So I'm going to go ahead and clip the other corners off of my rails, and that'll conclude cutting my tenons. Alright, so what I should have at this point are short rails with tenons that will mate with the mortises that I've cut, okay, on my legs. Okay, it's going to take a little bit of cleanup now with the chisel, but that will go ahead and get these to fit nicely. You can see we're starting to build now and end assembly. We have another leg up here. Moving forward, we're going to go ahead and talk about cutting the groove in the short rail, the lower short rail that will receive our bottom shunt.